Welcome to the NuroWisdom Podcast, the podcast between Gulwesh and Haris. Fading echoes of light, a silent wave through the night, the edge of forever, still moving onward.
See?
Yeah, exactly. And when you stare up at it, it feels like this giant, unchanging stage, like a fixed, permanent ceiling that's just been hanging over humanity since the dawn of time.
It really is the ultimate symbol of permanence. I mean, we literally navigate our ships by the stars because we assume they are exactly where they've, always been.
Which makes sense. Humans find that comforting.
Oh, absolutely. We like things to be visible, to be neatly categorized, and above all, we like them to be still.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because what if the very stage of the cosmos, like the actual fabric of that night sky, isn't a fixed ceiling at all?
That is the big question.
Right. What if instead it is actually stretching out in all directions every single second you look at it?
Which completely shatters that whole illusion of stillness.
Yeah.
Suddenly, that comforting, static dome is dynamic, it's swelling, and it's fundamentally restless.
And that is our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into a really fascinating source text. It's a transcript from a show called NuroWisdom.
Yeah, and the journey this text takes us on is absolutely wild.
It really is. We are going to explore the concept of the expanding universe, tracing how a 1,400-year-old spiritual text and 20th century astrophysics basically collided.
And revealed the exact same truth about our cosmos.
Yes. And we're also going to talk about what that literal cosmic expansion means for how you, the listener, live your everyday life.
To really appreciate how radical this idea of an expanding universe is, we first have to look at how fiercely the human mind resisted it.
Right.
Our source text points out that for centuries, the absolute, unquestioned scientific consensus was that the universe was entirely static.
And we're talking about the heavy hitters here, not just ancient philosophers. I mean, Isaac Newton firmly believed in a clockwork universe that sat completely still.
Yeah, and initially Albert Einstein did too.
Really? Even Einstein?
Even Einstein. The prevailing model of the universe was that it was a fixed box. It had a set size, it had always been that size, and it would always remain that size.
So the stars were essentially just like lanterns hanging from a permanent ceiling.
Exactly. But when Einstein first developed his theory of general relativity in 1915, he ran into a massive problem.
Which was what?
Well, gravity dictates that massive objects pull on each other, right? So if the universe is just a static box full of stars and galaxies, gravity should eventually pull everything together into one giant crushing crunch.
Oh, wow. So the math didn't match the assumption. If the universe was static, it should have collapsed in on itself already.
Precisely. His own equations suggested the universe had to be either collapsing or expanding. But Einstein was so deeply tied to the philosophical idea of a static universe that he actually altered his own equations.
He changed his own math.
He did. He added a mathematical fudge factor called the cosmological constant. It was basically an imaginary repulsive force he invented just to perfectly balance out gravity and keep his theoretical universe sitting perfectly still.
He literally rigged the math to save the fixed ceiling.
Yeah, which he later called his biggest blunder.
That goes to show how powerful the illusion of permanence really is. Like, if the sky looks the same to me as it did to my grandfather, well, obviously it's not moving.
Exactly. It's human intuition overriding actual data.
But the source text we're diving into today contrasts this long-held scientific fallacy with a narrative from a completely different domain. It brings up a 1,400-year-old Quranic reference, specifically from Surah Adh-Dhariyat. That's chapter 51, verse 47.
Right, and the text provides the translation of this verse, which reads, "And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander."
Now, keeping in mind that we are looking at this purely as an exploration of the source material, just imparting its ideas without making any theological endorsements, the linguistic analysis provided here is incredibly striking.
It really is. The text highlights a concept of divine design, like a deliberate, active construction of the cosmos.
The wording is what caught my attention. It doesn't just say, oh, we made it big once upon a time.
Right, and the text breaks down the specific Arabic terminology used in the verse. The word is muzin. In Arabic grammar, this is the active participle of the root verb asa, which means to expand or to make wider.
Meaning it's an ongoing action, not past tense.
Exactly. It doesn't mean we expanded it once and now the job is done. An active participle implies an ongoing, continuous expansion.
Wow.
So long before telescopes were even a concept, long before Newton was mapping gravity or Einstein was fighting his own math, you have this text explicitly describing a universe that is actively and continuously stretching.
It totally contradicts the entire lanterns hanging from a ceiling consensus of the ancient world.
It completely flips it on its head.
It's like living in a house
Yeah.
and trusting the blueprints that say the square footage is permanent. You're arranging your furniture, you're painting the walls, perfectly content that your living room is 20 by 20 feet.
Right, you're settled in.
But then you find an ancient note left in the foundation that insists the walls are actually sliding outward as we speak. You'd think whoever wrote it was crazy.
This raises an important question, though. If you have this house and you have this ancient note in the foundation telling you the walls are moving, well, science requires proof.
Right, you have to measure it.
Exactly. How do you actually measure the walls of the universe? How did the scientific community finally snap out of the static universe illusion and realize that this ancient concept of a growing cosmos was the physical reality?
And that brings us to the year 1929. Enter Edwin Hubble.
Yes. To understand what Hubble did, we have to look at the mechanics of how we know what we know about the stars. Because, you can't run a tape measure out to another galaxy.
No, obviously not. All we receive from them is light.
Exactly. And the source text brings up a phenomenon called redshift, which Hubble noticed when he was staring through the massive Hooker telescope at the Mount Wilson Observatory.
Let's break down redshift, because the source uses an analogy about an ambulance, and I want to make sure we really unpack the physics here.
Okay, let's do it.
So when an ambulance drives towards you on the street, it's chasing its own sound waves. So those sound waves get bunched up and compressed, right?
Right. And in sound, compressed waves mean a higher frequency, which your ear translates as a higher pitch. That's why the siren sounds so piercing and high as it approaches.
And then, the second it passes you and starts driving away, the ambulance is pulling away from the sound waves it's emitting. Those waves get stretched out behind it.
Exactly. Stretched sound waves mean a lower frequency, which you hear as a lower pitch. You hear that distinct drop in the sound as it speeds off.
Hold on, so if light travels in waves, just like sound does light change pitch when it moves away from us? Like, is that what makes it red?
That is the exact mechanism.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Light has a frequency, just like sound. But instead of translating frequency into pitch, our eyes translate light frequency into color.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. So if a galaxy is moving toward us, its light waves bunch up. Compressed light waves shift toward the blue end of the spectrum. We call that blue shift.
Okay.
But if a galaxy is moving away from us, those light waves get stretched out. Stretched light waves shift toward the red end of the spectrum.
Redshift. So if a star looks redder than it's supposed to, it's because it's physically moving away from the telescope, literally stretching the light waves behind it like an ambulance siren dropping in pitch.
What's fascinating here is that Hubble sat there analyzing the light from distant galaxies, and his massive realization, the breakthrough that completely overturned centuries of assumed astrophysics, was that almost every single galaxy he observed was redshifted.
Meaning they were all acting like the ambulance driving away from us. Every single one.
In every direction he looked. But it wasn't just that they were moving away. Hubble noticed something even more crucial. The further away the galaxy was, the faster it was receding. The redshift was more extreme the deeper into space he looked.
Oh, wait, stop. If Hubble looked through his telescope and saw everything moving away from him, and the furthest things were moving the fastest, doesn't that imply Earth is the exact center of the universe?
That's what a lot of people thought at first.
Because that sounds like ancient geocentrism all over again. I mean, if I'm standing in a room and everyone is running away from me, I must be standing in the exact center of the room.
That is the exact logical trap that confused people. But no, Earth is not the center, and the galaxies aren't firing cosmic thrusters to escape us.
They aren't.
No, they aren't flying outward through an empty room. The distinction here is the most important part of this whole deep dive. The galaxies themselves are actually relatively still. It's the actual space between the galaxies that is being created and stretched.
Here's where it gets really interesting. So, to be clear, the fabric of the universe itself is what's swelling up around them.
Yes. The source text uses the classic raisin bread analogy to make sense of this. Picture a loaf of raisin bread dough. You've just mixed it, it's sitting in a bowl, and you've got raisins scattered all throughout the dough.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now, you put it in the oven, and the dough begins to bake and expand.
Right, and as the dough expands, every single raisin gets further apart from every other raisin.
Exactly. If you were a tiny observer sitting on one of those raisins looking around, it would look like every other raisin was moving away from you.
Oh, I see.
And the raisins that were furthest away from you to begin with would seem to be moving away the fastest. Why? Because there's more expanding dough between you and them.
So the raisins aren't walking away from each other. They're stuck in their spots. The dough itself, the space between them, is what is stretching.
You got it. The galaxies are the raisins. Space is the dough.
That completely solves the center of the universe problem. Because no matter which raisin you sit on, it looks like everything is running away from you.
Exactly. Hubble was observing the dough rising. And this isn't just a poetic metaphor. It is literal, measurable math.
Oh, there's math to back this up.
Oh, yeah. The source introduces the mathematical formulation of this reality, known as the Hubble Law. It's V equals h sub 0 times d.
Okay, so v is velocity, the speed the galaxy appears to be moving away. And d is distance. Does that mean a galaxy twice as far away is moving twice as fast?
Yes, because there is twice as much space between us expanding.
And the h is 0.
That h sub 0 in the middle of that equation is the Hubble constant. It's the actual rate at which the universe is currently expanding. It proves mathematically what the raisin bread analogy illustrates conceptually.
That is mind-blowing.
But the implications of this simple equation are staggering. If you know how fast the universe is expanding today, you can run the math backward. You can calculate exactly how long it took for all the galaxies to get to where they are now.
Wait, so you can calculate the age of the universe?
Which we now know is roughly 13.8 billion years, all from measuring the redshift of light.
That's incredible.
And if you run the math forward into the future, it gets even more surreal. Because the expansion is accelerating, eventually the space between galaxies will stretch so fast that the light from distant stars will never be able to reach us.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Billions of years from now, an observer on Earth looking up at the night sky won't see any other galaxies. The sky will be almost completely dark.
So a future civilization might look up, see nothing but our own local stars, and mistakenly assume they are sitting in a completely static, isolated universe all over again. The ultimate cosmic irony.
It really is an incredible thought.
Wow.
So we have this journey. We have the 1,400-year-old text using the active word musion, detailing an ongoing design stretching. Then we have Hubble, hundreds of years later, proving it by measuring the red light of retreating galaxies.
And then we have the math proving that space itself is the rising dough. This is all mind-bending astrophysics. But the source text we're exploring today doesn't just stop at the science. It takes this macromechanic of the cosmos and asks a very pointed question about the micromechanics of the human experience.
This is where the synthesis of the material really shines. The text introduces the philosophical concept of the sunnah of the universe.
Sunnah, let's define that.
In Arabic, sunnah essentially translates to the habit, the customary practice, or, the fundamental way of doing things.
Like the default setting of reality.
Exactly. And what the science and the ancient texts both agree on is that the default setting, the sunnah of the universe, is expansion. The universe is never the exact same size 2 seconds in a row. It is inherently dynamic. It is constantly growing.
So what does this all mean? Because that stands in such stark contrast to human psychology. Think about how much we crave our lives to be static.
We really do.
We want the steady job, the predictable routine, the unwavering opinions. We crave that fixed ceiling because it feels safe. We build walls around our comfort zones and hope they never move.
The profound takeaway from the source text is that resisting change goes against the fundamental design of reality itself. I mean, if the universe you live in is fundamentally incapable of staying the same, why do you expect your life to remain static?
That hits hard. And the text revisits that Quranic verse we mentioned earlier and points at a very specific word choice. It says the heavens were constructed with strength.
Right.
The philosophical parallel here is that it inherently takes effort and strength to grow beyond your current boundaries. Expanding isn't passive, it's an active, forceful process.
It is a call to action. The text challenges the assumption that keeping your head down and staying exactly the same is a virtue. To be static is to be out of sync with the cosmos.
So think about your own life for a second. If the very universe, like the space you occupy right this moment, requires strength to keep expanding, what areas are you comfortably leaving on static mode?
That's a great question.
Are you sitting on outdated opinions because reevaluating them is uncomfortable? Are you avoiding new knowledge because it might challenge your worldview? Or maybe you're artificially capping your capacity for empathy or patience because expanding it takes too much effort.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source text leaves us with a beautiful distinction. Knowledge without reflection is just information.
Right.
Knowing that the universe expands is just trivia. It's a fun fact to share over coffee. But applied reflection turns that information into wisdom.
I love that.
Applying the physical reality of the cosmos to your own psychological and spiritual growth, well, that is wisdom.
Let's do a quick recap of the incredible journey this deep dive has taken us on today. We started with the illusion of a fixed, permanent night sky. We saw how even the brightest minds like Newton and Einstein fell for that illusion.
With Einstein going so far as to rig his own math just to keep the universe in a static box.
Then we explored how a 1,400-year-old verse framed the cosmos as a deliberate, expanding design, using the active word Mesian to describe a continuous, ongoing stretching long before anyone had the tools to prove it.
We rode along with Edwin Hubble in 1929 as he stared through his telescope, realizing the light from distant galaxies was stretching into the red spectrum, the ultimate cosmic ambulance driving away from us.
And we unpacked the mathematical reality, the Hubble law, that proved the galaxies aren't flying through an empty room. Space itself is the rising bread dough. The actual space between everything is swelling.
It really is a masterclass in how multiple perspectives, ancient spiritual texts, analyzing divine design, and modern mathematical physics measuring light waves, can point to the exact same truth.
The universe is never the same size 2 seconds in a row.
Yeah.
Expansion is the law of the land.
As we wrap up, there is one final thought to mull over, building on the source text challenge to avoid remaining static. We talked about how humans crave staying the same because it feels safe. But if the very fabric of reality, the actual space you are occupying right this second, is actively stretching and shifting, then perhaps the human concept of staying the same is a complete biological and physical illusion.
That's a really haunting thought. There really is no such thing as standing still.
There isn't. Your cells are constantly regenerating. The Earth is constantly hurtling through space. The universe is constantly expanding. You are in a state of continuous motion, whether you like it or not. You simply cannot be static.
So it's not a choice.
No, so the question isn't whether you will change. The question is whether you will take the wheel and choose the direction of your own expansion, or if you will just let the universe stretch you against your will.
The next time you step outside on a crisp night and look up at that sky, don't just see a fixed ceiling. Don't look for permanence. Look up and recognize that you are standing inside a living, breathing, swelling cosmos that is begging you to grow with it. Look at the stars and remember that it takes strength to expand.